used to call me Crazy Joe, well, now they can call me Batman.
Good morning. Welcome back to Crazy Joe's Concession Stand. I am Crazy Joe, and tonight we're going to be talking about Star Trek Section 31, the newest film in the Star Trek franchise, the first film in the Star Trek franchise to go direct to streaming and not have a theatrical release, the first Star Trek film to be headed up by an Academy Award winner, the first Star Trek movie to have a woman as the lead character, the first Star Trek movie not set on a starship. There's a lot of firsts involved with Section 31. The Section 31 project was first announced, I think, 2018, maybe 2017. It's been a while. It got significantly delayed due to the pandemic. And then after it got delayed due to the pandemic, the star of the project, Michelle Yeoh, won an Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, making her a very busy actress. A lot of offers started coming in. She started doing a lot of different projects. It seemed like everywhere you looked, there was Michelle Yeoh, which called into question, are they going to be able to get this show off the ground now that she's so in demand? Obviously, her schedule has made it almost impossible to do as a series. But credit to Michelle Yeoh, she's been so devoted to the concept of doing Section 31 and playing the role of Philippa Georgiou again, that she made this happen. She told them like, hey, we can't do a movie, or we can't do a series because I'm busy. Let's do a movie. So we got our first streaming movie. Now, I think this is a wonderful thing because it opens up the floodgates. If we're going to be able to do one-off streaming movies now, then that means you could follow this up with anything. You could do a sequel to Section 31. You could bring back parts of the franchise we haven't seen in a long time. Maybe you bring back Deep Space Nine for a movie. You know, the sky's the limit. We could visit areas of the Star Trek timeline that we've never examined before, because if you're not committing to a series, if you're only doing a one-off movie, there's pretty much nothing that's off the table. So I think it's an exciting concept. I also think that Paramount missed the boat by not releasing this to theaters. This was a very, very moderately priced movie. I think the total cost of the film was $50 million. And with the Star Trek brand name, there's obviously a large fan base for Star Trek. With the Star Trek brand name and an Academy Award-winning lead, I think you easily could have recouped your losses and made the film more valuable as a streaming content. Look what we saw with Red One. Red One with Dwayne Johnson did not do great in theaters, but it did really well when it hit Prime. And why did it do really well when it hit Prime? Because the fact that it had a theatrical release, even if it wasn't a big hit in theaters, gave it more gravitas than a direct-to-streaming film. So I think Paramount actually would have been wise to give this a theatrical release. But they didn't. I think that's leaving money on the table. But anyway, let's talk about the film itself. Section 31 is a very interesting movie in that a lot of the things we think of as Star Trek, a Starfleet crew, a Starfleet vessel, a chain of command, captain, first officer, lieutenants, that's missing from this film. Because this film is about the characters on the fringes in the Star Trek universe, the characters that aren't strictly Starfleet. I think the only Starfleet character we have in this is Rachel Garrett, who will someday go on to become the captain of the Enterprise. She's not the captain of the Enterprise yet, but in the episode Yesterday's Enterprise, we know Captain Rachel Garrett is the captain of the Enterprise C. She's the only Starfleet officer we have in this. What we have here is a doomsday weapon from the Mirror Universe has somehow made its way into our universe, and it was Empress Georgiou, Michelle Yeoh's character, who created this device in the first place, or had it created. And now she's flipped her allegiance. She's no longer part of the Terran Empire. She's living in our reality, or the Prime Star Trek universe. And she and a ragtag team need to prevent this doomsday device from destroying the universe. It's very Mission Impossible meets Guardians of the Galaxy. We've got this ragtag crew of misfits who come together. Each one of them has their own little speciality. It's very Mission Impossible, and it's got that same quirkiness as a Guardians of the Galaxy. And we have a pretty cool crew. We have a Delton, who, if you know anything about Deltons, they were introduced in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Lieutenant Ilia was a Delton. They give off pheromones that men find irresistible. So she's their quote unquote honey trap, and to distract the dudes. We have a Kamaloid, a shape-shifting race, not to be confused with the Changelings, which we met on Deep Space Nine. The Kamaloids, we've only met one Kamaloid before, and that was in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. This we have a Kamaloid here. We have a cyborg who's obsessed with biomechanical enhancements. And one of the most interesting characters is a microscopic organism that is piloting an android body shaped like a Vulcan. Like when we meet this Vulcan character, he's laughing and having a great time, and people are like, that's very un-Vulcan-like. Well, he's not a Vulcan. He's an android who looks like a Vulcan being piloted by this tiny microscopic creature called Fuzz. And Fuzz is a great character. And they all come together. There's also an augment from the eugenics wars. And they come together to reclaim this device that Empress Giorgio had built when she was Empress of the Terran Empire. This movie's been getting very, very negative reviews, and obviously some things are going to hit people differently. Obviously, all film is subjective. What works for one person isn't going to work for another person. It's just the way it is. But I do think some of the criticisms I'm hearing are very, very unfair or disingenuous. The number one criticism I'm hearing is, this isn't Star Trek. I'm hearing a lot of that. This isn't Star Trek. And I think that's incredibly unfair, because Star Trek is not all one thing. Star Trek has never been all one thing. And what we were used to seeing as Star Trek is a Starfleet crew, a ship under the command of a Starfleet captain. But if you watch Star Trek, that's not all that exists in this universe. There's alien races. There's people who are human but not part of Starfleet. There's a lot going on in Star Trek. We've always just focused on the Starfleet characters. Now, if you go back to Gene Roddenberry's original series, characters like these have always existed. You've always had your Harry Mudds and your Cyrano Joneses. If you go to the Next Generation, which Roddenberry was very involved in, you had Captain Okana. Remember Captain Okana? He was like the Han Solo of the Star Trek universe, who later on reappeared on Prodigy. You had these guys who existed on the fringe. Vash from Next Generation. Not everyone was Starfleet. Not everyone lived up to the ideals of Starfleet. That's always been there. That's been there since Gene was running the show. We just never focused on those characters before. So taking a step away and focusing on those characters isn't not Star Trek, because that's always been there in Star Trek. It's just we're looking over on the sides right now. We're looking on the fringes. If anything, it's world building. It's building out the world of the Star Trek 24th century that we haven't seen before. Now, maybe that's something you don't want to see. Maybe that's something that doesn't interest you. Okay, that's another conversation. If it doesn't interest you, it doesn't interest you. But that doesn't mean it's not Star Trek, because it's always been there. It's always been there in Star Trek. I liked it because I think it's world building. I think it's kind of coloring in the sides of the picture. Maybe if this was a coloring book, you've colored the center of the page, but now we're kind of coloring in the fine details around the corner. I think it adds texture and makes the Star Trek universe more interesting. I really enjoyed this film. I thought this film was a lot of fun. This was a romp. Guardians of the Galaxy and Mission Impossible, that's the best comparison you can make. If you enjoy those kind of movies, that's what this is. And it's frankly a blast. Is it the best Star Trek movie I've ever seen? No. Is it the worst Star Trek movie I've ever seen? No. It's somewhere towards the center. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. The worst Star Trek movie, I gave 1 star. I think the best I've probably given 5 stars to. So this is somewhere in the mid-range. And I really enjoyed it. And I'd like to see more of this crew. I wish we were getting a weekly series about them. I think this is a really fun show. And if your idea is, well, I only like my Star Trek being Starfleet crew, it's okay because you're still getting that. Strange New Worlds is getting a 3rd season. We just had the final season of Discovery. We're getting plenty of ship-based captain, first officer, traditional Star Trek. We've had plenty of that, and we're continuing to get that. So something a little different doesn't hurt. I think one of the wise things about when Deep Space Nine came on, Next Generation was on the air, and they were like, well, we're going to do a spinoff. Let's not do a Starship show. We've already got a Starship show. So Deep Space Nine crossed over with, it was on at the same time as Next Generation. So you had 2 Star Trek shows on. They weren't both the same. One was ship-based, one was space station. And then when Next Generation ended, they replaced it with another ship-based. So you always had Starship-based Star Trek, but also you had something different. And it looks like that's what Alex Kurtzman and the producers are doing right now. We got Strange New Worlds. We had Discovery. So we had 2 ship-based Star Trek shows. And now the next thing we're going to get is Starfleet Academy, which is going to be set at a school. So again, you have a contrast. It's like, yeah, you got this show that's the traditional Star Trek you want. And now the spinoff is kind of coloring in the sides and doing something different. And that's what Strange New World's doing. I really enjoyed this. I watched it twice. Like I said, 3.5 stars. I say, check it out if you like Star Trek, if you like Mission Impossible, if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, if you like Michelle Yeoh, give Star Trek Section 31 a shot and have an open mind. Don't be regimented in like Star Trek is only one thing. Star Trek has never been only one thing. And I think you'll have a blast with this film. I sure did. All right, everybody, keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open it, it's a trap. Oh, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs. Some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas. But no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. I know we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.